Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I want to talk about my Velka 3 case and the editing, gaming, photo editing, kind of powerhouse machine that I've been able to pack into this small case. A lot of people have used this case to do kind of a smaller form factor case that you can throw in a backpack and take anywhere you want. Granted, you're still gonna have to pack a monitor or something like that, but this small case is really awesome. So I'm just gonna do a quick teardown of what I have and then kind of talk some more about the details on it. So let's get started. Perfect, so already what you're gonna probably notice is I have this interesting looking cutout in this panel, and you're probably thinking, well, that's crazy. I doubt it comes that way from the factory or from the people who make the case, and you'd be exactly right. So what I did is I'm using a different CPU cooler than what some other YouTubers have used. This one protrudes out of the case, and I like to joke that it's a lot like a muscle car's air intake or big hood scoop. So basically the CPU in my computer is an Intel 4-core i7 6700K, and basically the CPU runs too hot for the small form factors CPU cooler that a lot of people use in this case. So what I did is I used a little jigsaw and I cut out a hole so that this could fit right through there. This is the front. It's kind of a nice, very sleek, almost Mac looking aesthetic. This is the side where the motherboard is facing this direction. Then this is the back, and I have a lot of different ports. I opted for a little more expensive motherboard, so I had lots of ports because this case doesn't have a front I/O like a lot of cases do. It's just got this one button, and I really like that look. You can see the bottom here. At the bottom, you can see this power supply here, the cooling fan, etc., etc. And then this side just has a blank vented panel for the fan on the graphics card. So I'm gonna leave that panel on for now. You may notice also that the top of this, on my case, has these two fans, and yes, it does look a little silly. Why I decided to do this video is the company sells these small 80mm fans, and they're okay, but they're incredibly loud in my opinion. I really don't like them a whole lot. They are a small enough form factor so that they can fit inside the case, and the case does have this little opening area where this basically will fit right in on the top. So if you can see that there's like this little spacing on top of the motherboard where this can slide in and fit, and it's nice because then everything would fit inside the case. But unfortunately, I wanted to have better performance and sound rather than something to fit inside the case and look, very perfect. So I've got these brand new Cooler Master fans to put on the top. These ones on the top of my case I got used from a friend, and so this one in the front, and this is why this cable's out here just dangling. This one actually broke. It's a couple years old, and then this one in the back has been cooking away, and I think it's been on 100% load for like a couple of years now, so I didn't really want to keep using that one. So now that we're looking at this, I just want to give maybe a little more detailed view of this. So this fan on top is a 120mm fan. It fits on this cooler. I'll put a link in the description to all the parts that I'm using down below. This is some G.Skill RAM. I have 16 gigabytes of RAM in here. And then this is a 600 watt power supply. A lot of companies don't sell a large enough power supply to fit in this case, so they're kind of hard to come by. This is the second power supply I bought for this case. The first power supply that I bought for this case is this one right here. I believe the brand is FSP. You can see this here. I'll try and show kind of the specs on it here, but I believe this one is a 400 watt power supply, and it just wasn't enough. I've got an RTX 2070 mini packed in here. I've got that 4-core i7 processor, 16 gigs of RAM. I've got a 1 terabyte M.2 drive, and then I'm also gonna be mounting this to the back of my case so that I've got a little more storage, because with doing more video editing, I've needed to expand my space a little bit in the case. And so you can see I've taken off this front panel, and there's 4 screws. I'll show you where they are, but they're right here, here, and then up here, and then up here. And those actually hold a lot of the case together. So once I take off these back screws, you'll kind of see that more out of the way. So now if you look in the back here, I've got all the power cables strung throughout the back. That's kind of the only space where you can do some cable routing. So that's where all those cables have been put. And then this is my small RTX 2070 mini. Face this here. These two motherboard standoffs actually screw into the frame of the case. You have to go through these special steps to assemble the case and deassemble. So there we go. Kind of pull that apart, and I always am a little careful when I take this out because I'm gonna just unplug this here. This is the little power switch cable, plugs in, and so once you get these two fans disconnected, there. Okay, so this is the front of the case. It's kind of crazy. It's just like this aluminum black powder coated panel and shell, and for the most part this just kind of slides over the rest of it. So I'm going to set that up here. But that is where we're going to attach these new fans. Graphics card just kind of slides behind here, and you're maybe wondering how on earth the graphics card actually plugs into this computer. And it's got this flexible PCIe rerouting cable. So I may have worded that maybe not exactly the most technical way, but basically there's a cable that goes right under the motherboard right here, and then comes over behind the back and plugs into the top of the graphics card right here. So hopefully that kind of explains how it's done. I haven't seen a great teardown video of this case, so I hope this is helpful if any of you decide to order this case and build it. I know when I've been monitoring this case to maybe potentially buy a second one, or even when I was trying to buy the first one, it sells out fairly quickly. So if you do like them, make sure to monitor their website. All right, so now the next thing we want to do here is I'm gonna lay this on the back here. Hopefully that doesn't hurt the graphics card too badly. It should be okay. But there's not a great way to stand this up. There's this power supply on the bottom which got this nice metal plate so I can stand it up nicely. But when you're wanting to work on the inside of here, it's kind of challenging. So there's not what I've found with my motherboard, it's the Z270 Asus Strix motherboard, is there's not a lot of fan ports. So I've got this fan splitter here. That just kind of comes in handy because you don't want to use the CPU fan port for your peripheral fans, because if you're doing any sort of fan control in your BIOS, that's going to create some issues on setting your fan speeds. So I'd recommend using one of these splitters if you don't have a ton of ports. So now next thing we want to do is we want to find a good place to plug in this SSD. And I'm going to grab my SSD cable over here. See if we can zoom in here a little bit. So anytime you're trying to find a port on a motherboard, over here is where all the SATA ports are. They typically have etched onto the motherboard some sort of label. So I'm looking at this one over here, and there's a port over here that says SATA port 1. So that's the one I'm going to use because I want this to be prioritized in the list of hard drives. Well, I think it doesn't really matter in my opinion. I don't think your computer is going to have trouble sorting through SATA 1 versus SATA 2 and whether it should pick one or the other. But now another thing you're going to have to do is if you buy a motherboard for building a computer, it comes with a lot of different SATA cables, and you can choose different SATA cables that you want to use. I have a couple of them here. You can see this doesn't have any 90-degree turns on it. This one does have a 90-degree turn on it. And so when we're mounting this SSD to one of these panels like this on the outside, we are gonna want to make sure that we use the correct type of cable. And so this is my back panel, and I'm planning on mounting the SSD lower, kind of down by down by the power supply. So you're not gonna wanna use a 90 degree cable like this one. I think we're gonna have some issues with that. So I'm gonna use one of these more flush cables. You can see that there. So perfect. All right, so now let's do this here. See how there's this little hole right here? There's some nice little openings in the case where your graphics card fits in. There's a hole here, and then there's also a hole right up here. So I think I'm gonna be able to feed the power cable and my SSD cable through there. The only issue is I'm probably gonna have to take off my graphics card in order to do that, so. And at times, honestly, when you're assembling this case, it feels like you might break components. Like it can be kind of scary at times, in my opinion. But it will go together, and you probably won't break anything, so I wouldn't worry too bad. All right, so now I'm gonna try and display this the best I can with also, so I don't break it. All right, so now we're gonna pull this little plastic piece back. This is the little safety mechanism to hook that in. We're gonna wiggle this graphics card. There we go. All right, unplug from the motherboard, and then I'm gonna unplug my power source back here. It's made by Gigabyte. It's the 270. I haven't unplugged these because I figure why damage those ports. So now I can maybe do a little bit of a better view on actual motherboard. So the motherboard kind of freely floats in here. So when I pick it up, I've got to be kind of careful. But basically, see, it's just like, here's the other half of the case right here. This is the back of the motherboard, and then I've got this. There's really not a whole lot of extra space in here. So the power supply only hooks into the case with these two screws. So everything's really kind of holding itself together by a thread until you put those outer panels on. But now what I want to do is I want to pick one of these cables. So this is my display cable for the power supply of the video cable, or the video card. So we'll set that to the side. This is a peripherals power cable. You can tell by these big Molex, I think is what they're called. And these teeny ones, those are for our SSD. All right, so now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna pick one of these. Doesn't really matter, they're just power sources, so there's really no proprietary connection or anything like that. So the video card gets in the way when I'm trying to route these cables, so that's what I'm doing. I'm gonna put my video card back in. And I think we've got everything right where we need it, so that's what our next step is gonna be. Here's our SSD. We've got the power cable and we've got the data cable plugged in. This is gonna wrap around just like this. And then we're gonna mount it upright so that Samsung looks nice on there. All right, so here is the bag that the case comes with. It's not too official or professional, but it does the job. We're gonna scare up a couple of hard drive screws in here. I found this little plastic mounting brackets for this LED strip that I bought, and I think they'll work. They're clear and they're gonna be on the inside of the case, so that's okay. I don't really care exactly what they look like. If you want something that matches your case better, then you might just need to go buy some small black washers or something. And then we've got this little plastic washer. I'll zoom in here so you can hopefully see it a little better. Basically, Here's my little plastic washer. Here's my other screw that I've mounted so far. We're just gonna put another screw through here into this other. You see how I got that mounted on the outside of the case. I think that's gonna work just fine. So, and we're gonna open up these fans. So I've looked at a lot of different fans, and honestly, it's really hard in my opinion to shop for fans online. I know there's decibel levels, but unless you have a really keen ear, which I don't, you can't really hear what different decibel levels actually sound like. And you know, if someone says, oh, this one has 22 decibels and this one has 24 decibels, I can't tell that difference in my ear. What I really want to know is just what it sounds like when fans are running at full load or something. So they do the trick. They're not super flashy and they're really quiet in my opinion. They're these nice 80mm ball bearing fans made by Cooler Master. They're only 15mm thick too, so they're really low profile. And so for all those reasons, I actually really like them. I just haven't been able to find a better fan other than this one. Back of the fan, and this is the front of the fan. And these are the two fans that are currently on my case that I want to replace. I'm replacing them with the same fans. Everything I had to mount from the inside because, well, I had to mount these fans on the outside. So if you look here, this is where, if you wanted to put the stock fans, they fit right inside here, just like that. Or you can also put an SSD in this space on the case, but cooling is really challenging too with this case, which is why I had to get that bigger CPU cooler, just because it's so challenging with such a small form factor to actually get it to stay cool. Alright, so now I've got the case fans off of the top and I'm going to dispose of the other ones. So now what we want to do is we want to make sure that we have the fans pointing in the right direction. We want to have a pressure gradient inside the case so that all the air is being pulled out of the case. That'll really help with cooling and it'll just make for better performance in your CPU and keeping it cooler. So what I want to do is, since this side is going to be where the CPU sticks out of, and this side is where the SSD is going to be mounted to, I'm going to try and hide this side more than this side when I have it at my desk. So I want to have these wires on top being hidden as well. So if this is the SSD side, I'm going to have all of the wires hidden. This one I'm going to have pointing to the back because there's an opening right back here, and this one I'm going to kind of sneak right down the side by a panel. So we're gonna have them point that direction, and we wanna have the lettering, serial numbers, etc. on the top of here pointing up so that when we screw this in, all the air is gonna be blowing out. All right, next step now is basically we're gonna start plugging everything back in and reassembling the case. Found it in my book here. Hopefully it'll come into focus here so I can just show you what I'm talking about. But basically, here's the power button right here on the top. And according to my little layout here, I gotta make sure my ground and my power are plugged into the right spots. So my ground is at the top of that section of 4. So we're gonna go here. Before I move this too much, I did a little bit of wire routing off camera. I'm gonna tip this back as best I can without pulling this all apart because no screws are in, but basically I got most of this cables routed in there just like that. All right, so as you can see here, I got these screws in. The one thing is now that I've got this SSD on the back here, I'm not gonna be able to use these little rubber feet because this protrudes too much, but here I kinda like how that turned out. Got a couple little cables here, they're running out. There's like enough cable so that it's not like ruining the connections, but also it's very tight. And if you look on the top here, we got these cables ran through the side there and these ran through the side here. So I'm really liking how that turned out, and you can see cables through this back vent, but that's okay. That's kind of just part of it. Cut out. Okay, so now what we're gonna do is turn this around. So when I put each one of these screws in, if you slide this, see how there's that little, our screw has to go through, and there's another one of those on the top as well, right here. My cover back in here, the muscle car cover. Hopefully this video is helpful for you. I got my fans replaced here on top, and then on the back here we've got this SSD, and you can see this computer in my setup tour video if you're kind of wondering how it looks on my desk. But basically everything is pretty clean. This power supply and these cables and everything is so nice on the back here, and fans, brand spanking new. Hopefully they work really well. The front has this clean, sleek look. So basically, when you see this on my desk, it looks like this. So thanks for watching, and if you have any questions about this build, feel free to post them down in the comments. My channel isn't super followed at this moment, so I typically can answer any questions you might have, and I'll do what I can to assist you. Another thing I like about this case is just my RAM is RGB, so it sticks out through there. So there's still a little bit of RGB on here, even though this is kind of a sleek, more Apple-esque case. So, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.